Well, Seth, always great to see you, sir. How you doing?
I couldn't be better.
Yeah.
It's good to be in the golf world right now, isn't it?
Oh, my gosh. That's what I wanted to ask you about, golf as a business. We'll get to the Ryder Cup and the PGA Championship later, and, of course, the new home of the PGA of America.
Right.
Very healthy, wouldn't you say? Maybe more healthy now than it has been in, 30 years?
Yeah, probably ever. I mean, I've been in the business for 3 years, so I'm taking full credit there.
There you go.
But I can't imagine it's ever been better, right? And the numbers just came out from the NGF this morning. It's up another 6% or so. The difference, I think, is golf has had booms and busts, obviously, but I don't know that it's ever been this cool, right? And the people that are playing it are different. The 20-somethings that are, out there discovering the game either for the first time or rediscovering it. And I've got a few of those.
Sure.
And they're obsessed. And I think, COVID helped that because there was more free time, obviously, and more time at home. But, I think this is going to be really sticky. I think it's going to be really generational. Obviously, the professional game's in amazing shape, and there's a bunch of great characters. And the leadership of the game has never been sort of more aligned towards making sure this is generational. The game, has been, we're really, it's much more welcoming and, in fact, invitational to invite everybody to play the game. And the fastest growing cohorts of this growth are, juniors. There's 600,000 new junior players last year. And then the other two fastest is women and people of color, right? And so that's really, that's great. It's cool and I think sustainable. If you just look at who's playing, it's, fathers playing with daughters. It's grandparents playing with grandkids. The whole thing is just great. It's sort of taking you to your family as opposed to away from them. And I'm proud of how the game behaved in the height of it. Jay was amazing about getting it to be the first sport back on television. Some of the disadvantages of the game, which was, remoteness and, you only see 3 people or whatever, that obviously became a strength. And we worked with the CDC and other health authorities as well as the industry to kind of, put a thumb on the scale to say, hey, we can be part of the solution rather than the problem, and had back to golf, which, so we're really the first participation sport back too, because at its core, golf's a walk in the park, right? Like if you and I carry our bags, like that's, pretty safe, right? On 200 acres.
I remember you were asked, I think it was at the PGA last year, about the disruption of external leagues coming in and kind of changing things, and you had an interesting comment about welcoming that in a lot of ways, and I'm less curious about the way that other leagues are affecting the PGA Tour and more curious about where you've seen that in other areas of golf, not just like the professional golf.
Well, I think you can see it here on the floor, right? Like I came from an industry that if you're not disrupting, you're getting run over, right?
Yeah.
And if you got to reinvent yourself and you got to get younger every year, and do that. And then that was in banking, and then I was a partner at a private equity firm called Silver Lake, which is technology based, and so they were in the business of that, right? And you realize that we were a business. It's $85 billion. It's got 2 million people working in it. And we haven't evolved as much, or hadn't evolved as much as we should have, and that it was ripe for the taking. And I think, frankly, before COVID, I thought we were in a beginning of a bull market. COVID obviously, kind of has accelerated that. But we got into that narrative of the game's declining and et cetera, which I don't think was true. And things like Topgolf, right, which have been extraordinary for the game and were viewed as the enemy maybe at first by, green grass and sort of, the incumbents. Turns out that, no, they're a great partner, right? They're gonna introduce people to the game in a different way. And so the ways that you can consume golf now are so different, right? And the boom in the par threes, the putt-putt that's going on, the simulators, the learning it on your phone, how you consume it, professionally in terms of, streaming and everything else that's happening. And so, we have to sort of go where the puck's going, right? We can't be protecting our grandparents' game. We got to figure out, kind of where it needs to go.
Yeah.
And like hoodies were controversial, and now obviously they're commonplace. And look, I think golf can be consumed in all different ways, but in any green grass can be very different. Like sometimes, let's equate it to a restaurant. Sometimes you want to put on a coat and go to a French restaurant and have a great date night. Other times you want a burger, and play loud music, and that's okay. Like I'm for golf in every form, and so. If you hit balls on the way home, you play golf that day. If you get squeezing 3 holes before dark, if you putt on your carpet, if you take some of the technology that's here, today, that you played golf that day. So when I first got here, I made to the PGA, I put a person in charge, Arjun Chowdhury. I made him innovation chief. And everybody goes, well, what's that? And I said, well. It's a department of one that is going to, sort of embrace technology, is going to look at deals. We're going to create an innovation fund that invests in, new things that are good for the game. Hopefully we make money on it, but more importantly, it's sort of in the game. And secondly, it's going to create a bit of a mindset around what we're doing, that, that we need to move a little faster or we're going to get kind of run over.
Yeah.
And again, so the first year we did that, we had an innovation center at the show. Well, we don't have an innovation center anymore because it's everywhere, right? And I don't mean we did that, but when you say, I think disruption is good, right? Like that's what needs to happen. That's what America is, right? That's what Silicon Valley is. And so you've got to embrace that rather than get run over it and keep in front of it and have it be your friend rather than your enemy, right? And so that's what it's all about. And we're in an $85 billion business, and it's cool, and people are starting to notice that and are all around it, which is great. But we just got to, again, embrace it as opposed to be afraid of it.
It is funny because I harken back to Caddyshack and Rodney Dangerfield with a golf bag with the big speakers. And at the time, everybody laughs, and now that'll never happen in golf. Well, it's happened.
It's happened.
And it's a cool thing to be a part of that, right?
It's 100%.
Yeah.
Right? And there are, look, there's days when you want that, and you want to have music and, play without your shirt on or whatever. Like that's okay in the right place. And then there's, places like Augusta and other great places around that are always going to be what they are, and that's great. Like that's not in conflict, I don't think. They're just what you want to do that day.
I'm curious about the Netflix documentary that's being made, Professional Golf. PGA of America is the report that I saw was all the majors and organizations are on board. Was that an easy yes for you? What was that like?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, we wanted to obviously to understand the details and make sure that. And the other cool thing that's happening in golf is that the industry is working together in a way that it never has. Right. When I kind of walked in the room, I think most people were sort of viewing it as enemies as opposed to partners. And my perspective is like we're the board of directors of golf, and we're all in sort of building it. And occasionally you might compete on something, but mostly we're partners. I borrow their players, a couple times a year, right? But we're in the business of growing it every day, and I'm in the business of making my members' lives better, so they can make millions of lives better through that. And so anything that's good for the game, is good for us. But obviously, you think about the details of how you're going to be represented. So the interesting part about it, and I say all that, is because the majors all sort of negotiated together. We banded together and said, okay, let's create, an equal playing field and a contract that we all sort of agree to. And that wasn't hard. It wasn't hard to get them to want to do that together, and it wasn't hard to do it because if you look at what Netflix did for Formula One, which, I got 2 25 and 6-year-old boys, like they didn't know what F1 was, and they saw the Drive to Survive, and now they get up, hungover on Saturdays to watch it, right? Like, so it's, if you think about that personalization, that sort of access in a different way, we think it's going to be great for the game. And I think gaming is the same way. Again, you've got to be careful about it, and you don't want it to overrun or become part of the values of who we represent. But it's going to grow the game. It's going to create interest in a whole different way. I mean, you look at cricket, and what's the secret to that? Well, they're betting on every bowl, right? And golf is ripe for that, and so it's going to create fans, which I think creates participation, and that's good, right?
In the Ryder Cup, Seth, what a wild success that was last year. Much needed, not only for golf, but I think for sports in general. We all love watching that. The Ryder Cup has elevated itself. Where is it in the ratings of the majors? I mean, it's pretty wild. People look forward to that.
It's really, it's a combination of, the Olympics, the Super Bowl, and a Stones concert, right? I mean, I remember sitting, and literally it was my first week on the job was Paris. I got asked to do this, and that happened to be the timing, and I, didn't think I should announce the job and not be there. So I remember sitting on the opening ceremony, and I'm sure you all have been there, and whoever's listening, if you're watching, if you haven't, been there, it's one of those bucket lists. That first shot on the first day is incredible, right? It's an Olympics gold medal. It's, whatever moment. And ironically, the first shot on the first day is maybe the moment of the whole thing, right? In a lot of ways. And I remember, Michael Jordan was sitting, in front of me. The jets are going over, the flags are going, the people are screaming. And you kind of go like, this is amazing, but it's also like this awesome responsibility, right? That you've been given this gift of an asset that you need to nurture and take care of and make better, right? And I'm also sitting there saying, the next couple nights, you're at a black tie dinner at the Palace of Versailles, going like, okay, we got to go to Sheboygan, which is a great town and has its own, great traditions, but it's not, it's a little different. And so the healthy competition that's going on between us and Ryder Cup Europe, who are great partners, couldn't be better, and we'll never work better together there in terms of worldwide partners and everything we're doing. Is that we all are raising the bar on each other, right? We have this asset. It allows us to do, everything that we're able to do for the game and for our members to a large degree. And how do we raise the bar every year? And how do we make it, better? And we've got our not so secret weapon in Kerry Haig, who creates theater on the golf course like nobody else ever. I mean, he's the best in the world ever of doing what he does. I certainly don't have any question about that. And then all the people around that make it what it is. And the other, we need to raise it, and it's great for the game. It's different than anything else that we do, right? And I think the fact that it's every other year and it's only a home game every 4 years is really important. And when you say it was important for sports, we had the honor of being the first major back in 20, right, when we did at Harding Park. And it wasn't, it was great theater, but it certainly wasn't the biggest thing we ever did because there were 0 fans, but it was probably the most important one we ever did because it was the first game that mattered from the Super Bowl, really. Yeah. And I looked at the Ryder Cup in the same way. So when we rolled it a year, we had the tour was great about it, and we, the captains, everybody else. But it was to me, you can't have a Ryder Cup without that passion. You can't have it without the fans. Yeah. And so the ability to do that, and then the Olympics obviously got dealt a very tough hand, and and the Olympics are still the Olympics, but it was different than the party we were able to throw, and the timing between Delta and Omicron worked out, and again, everything's outdoors, and obviously did it as safely as responsibly. But the passion that people have, the people that are completely spoiled that I know that go to a Ryder Cup say, I'll never miss one because that is just different than anything on earth. Yeah. And so we're grateful to have it, and very daunted by that. Opportunity, but also obligation to raise the bar every year.
That transition from Champagne and Versailles to Spotted Cow in Green Bay is quite a transition. Yeah. The last thing I was curious about the Ryder Cup, or the last question that I have here is, it's this weird juxtaposition of it's a commercial product, right? You're not letting people in for free, but it's also a very pure event in that the players, I mean, man, I don't know if they would ever admit to this. It seems like they would pay to play in it. Yeah. Right? Yeah. They don't, they're not being paid. I mean, I know they get money and give it away to charity and whatever.
And we write a check to the tour as well.
But it's how do you maintain that? Because there's nothing else like that in golf. Yeah. Everything else, they can make millions if they win or whatever. Do you think about that juxtaposition?
Obviously, and again, that's part of this daunting thing of how do you have this amazing thing, and how do you keep that passion alive? And I think a couple things. One, I'd say all you have to really do is look at Rory's interview afterwards, right? Yeah. And I think that sort of said it all about what it is. The other thing I'd say is the rookies, because my son grew up playing against a lot of these guys, so I've known a lot of them since, when they were 12 or whatever. The wide-eyedness, and they came in thinking, okay, this is going to be cool, and they come out like whatever. I had a before and after conversation with Patrick Cantlay, and he's a very thoughtful guy, and he likes to know how things work, kind of guy, and his eyes are completely open to kind of what it is. Yeah. And if you, to your point on pay, like if you said to Ian Poulter or Paul McGinley or Monty or like a lot of and I can name some Americans as well, but what did the Ryder Cup mean to you? What was that? What did that do for your brand?
Right.
What did that do for your legacy? What did that do for your soul? Right, like the fulfillment. I mean, there's just JT and Daniel. I mean, like. It's just it's raw and it's beautiful and it's emotional. And these guys, it's a lot of their life, and now I know they all have teams and that sort of thing, but a lot of it's a lonely deal, and it's kind of table for one a lot. Yeah. And to get a chance to be part of something that's that extraordinary, that the world really cares about, and to behave in a slightly different way than maybe you would because of the emotion of the team. And it's okay because it's your country, right? Like, and it's patriotism rolled into it. It's 4th of July too, right in there. And I think from a European's perspective, it's the same thing. They never get to act as a continent, right? And they do, and their passion is every bit as much as ours, if not more.
Yeah.
So,
Seth, last question. No other sport. Team sport, individual sport, can a 50-year-old man win a major championship and hoist the Wanamaker? I mean, it truly is remarkable. Yeah. I'm not sure enough was made of what Phil accomplished. How special was it, the fact that he did win the PGA championship?
It's crazy, and it's a reminder of like why we're all in the sports, right? Because sports is crazier than theater. You just can't kind of make it up. I wouldn't quite tell Fed yet that a 50-year-old can't win, or Tom Brady that he can't win a Super Bowl, but. And that's an amazing part of it too. Obviously, fitness and health and everything else is extending lives, which is lives and sporting lives, which is great. But it's a moon landing, right? And you couldn't, you just kind of couldn't believe it was happening. And okay, he's had a great run, but it has to, something has to happen, or he has to, And he's an amazing athlete, an amazing performer. One of those guys that gets better when it matters most. I remember, when I was at Deutsche Bank, we had the Deutsche Bank Championship, and Tiger and Phil were in the last group on the last day, and I walked a few holes inside, and it, the intensity of him and them, and I knew Phil pretty well, and after the round, I sort of handed him the trophy, shook his hand, and he sort of looked right through you. It was like, "Where's Amy? Where are the kids? I can't." And then he came back like an hour later and said, "I'm sorry, I was kind of..." So, that intensity that he has, that those, very elite of the elite athletes have is incredible. And to be able to sort of dial that in when it mattered most is just an awesome, awesome thing. So, am I surprised? Yeah. Am I shocked? Probably not. Tom Watson almost won the Open at, what was that?
59.
59.
Yeah.
So, part of the beauty of this game. I mean, this game, I think, is the greatest engine for good on earth. That's why I'm so privileged and honored to have this opportunity I'll never have a chance to impact more lives than I have now, right, through this game. And it's every other sport has to borrow us for charity. Every other sport, is their second sport. An NBA owner told me his biggest recruiting tool now is like a private club in town because they all started playing during the bubble. And then it's the relationships and the lessons and the caddying for your kid and playing with your kid and all the stuff that we get to do. And another one is that you can do it forever, and we can do it, from a different tee, but we can compete, for the rest of our lives, in some form in this game. So it's an awesome game, That's I'm very lucky and privileged to be a part of it.
It's awesome.
Seth, thanks.
Great to be with you all. Thanks for all you do.